Dallas Jenkins, the showrunner and director of The Chosen, disclosed a new slate of spin-offs and the release window for The Chosen Season 5 during the 2024 ChosenCon, also known as the Chosen Insiders Conference. Fans of The Chosen are ready to learn when the 5th season of the show will premiere in the next year. It has recently been reported that Dallas Jenkins will be live streaming the announcement of the release date for the upcoming season of the Bible-based series that has been extremely successful. The announcement will take place on Sunday at 7 o'clock Eastern Time. All of the events that take place during the 5th season will take place over the course of a single week, beginning with Palm Sunday and ending with the events that lead up to Jesus Jonathan Rumi arrest and crucifixion. This will make the 5th season entirely different from the previous seasons. It is anticipated that Dallas Jenkins will reveal the exact day in the following year that Season 5 will make its debut, given that the release window for the new season in 2025 has already been established. In addition, it is important to note that he might declare 2 different release windows for The Chosen Season 4, given that the 4th season opened in cinemas before being made available on streaming services. In addition to revealing information about the 5th season, the next live stream will also feature the unveiling of new products and the promotion of Dallas Jenkins' upcoming holiday film, The Best Christmas Pageant Ever, which will also feature the appearance of comedian Pete Holmes and actress Lauren Graham Gilmore Girls. On Sunday, fans will be able to watch the live stream on several platforms, including Facebook, YouTube, and The Chosen's free app. In contrast to the events that took place prior to the crucifixion of Jesus, which are recounted in Season 5, The Chosen will not discuss the crucifixion until Season 6, which will air in 2027. There will be a focus on the resurrection in the 7th and last season of the series, which will premiere in the year 2028. However, despite this, that is not the conclusion of the saga of The Chosen. Despite the fact that the current series has aired for 7 seasons, Dallas Jenkins has revealed that there will be a following spin-off of The Chosen called Acts of the Apostles. It is anticipated that the cast of the program will continue to be comprised of the same individuals. However, despite this, it is possible that Jonathan Rumi's Jesus still has more stories to tell under the banner of The Chosen. In addition to providing the voice for an animated version of Jesus in The Chosen Adventures, which will also make its debut in 2025, program writer Ryan Swanson said that a Bible narrative that was left out of The Chosen that involves Jesus would be included in a different series. On Sunday at 7 o'clock Eastern Time ET, the release date of The Chosen Season 5 will be announced through a live stream that will be broadcast on Facebook, YouTube, and the free app for The Chosen. Both Hulu and Disney are currently streaming the first 3 seasons of The Chosen. Peacock, the program's free app, as well as Amazon Prime Video, both offer streaming access to the first 4 seasons of the show. September marked the end of filming for the 5th season of The Chosen, but fans are already worrying about the upcoming 6th season. You need not be concerned since, as stated by one of its stars, everything is proceeding as expected. The 5th season of The Chosen is scheduled to launch in 2025. It will chronicle the events that took place during Holy Week and will certainly conclude with the arrest of Jesus, thereby preparing viewers for the events that make up the Passion. Approximately 1 month prior to the conclusion of the 5th season, it was able to achieve its financing objective. The following is an important fact that you should keep in mind. According to Dallas Jenkins, fewer than 5% of the tens of millions of people that watch the series actually pay for it. With the assistance of the Come and See Foundation, the flagship show will always be available to stream for free, but in order to accomplish its ultimate aim, which is to translate the series into 600 different languages so that it can be viewed all over the world, the organization is dependent on donations. On the other hand, if you go to the website of Come and See, you will notice that the only episode of Season 6 that has received sufficient money is Episode 1. Episode 2 has received 41%, $2.9 million of its goal. while the remaining 6 episodes have received no funding at all. The actor who plays Shmuel, Sean Sharma, became aware of this after it was posted on the subreddit dedicated to the show from which it originated. It is Shmuel here. It is the responsibility of the Come and See Foundation to make certain that we have access to the monies that we require in order to finish the event, even if the donations do not arrive as quickly as is required. According to his explanation, there is no risk that the show would not go into production as it was originally planned. With that being said, we won't begin production on Season 6 until the spring of 2025. There is a significant amount of time for donations to be received. We are grateful to each and every one of you for your support of the show. We finally have our first look at the 5th season of The Chosen, as the show has released a brief sneak peek on social media. Despite the fact that it has only been a few months since the conclusion of the 4th season, it is very difficult to wait patiently for what is to come next in the series. Without further ado, let's investigate what will happen next in The Chosen. But before we do that, we would like to offer our congratulations to The Chosen for reaching a global audience of 1 billion people. Dallas, Texas. The news was only shared by Jenkins on Instagram a few days ago, and as someone who has been a fan of the program for a very long time, I must say that this is an incredible accomplishment. I am not surprised that 1 billion people agree with me. If you are also one of those 1 billion people, please leave a smiley face in the comments section below. Let's demonstrate the power of the Chosen fandom together. However, we should acknowledge that for a crowdfunded show to achieve such success, it is a rare occasion for sure, and it has the potential to transform the entire industry. The good news is that Jenkins is aware of how much people appreciate his work, and as a result, he is willing to expand The Chosen into a universe. But despite the subject matter of the show, and the majority of the other Chosen universe shows that are currently in the making, he avoids the typical faith-based label. In a recent interview with IndieWire, Jenkins explained what sets his show apart from others by saying, "We do Bible better or in a unique way compared to anyone else." This creative storytelling has resonated with a wide variety of viewers, showcasing real human emotions and struggles. In contrast to the often distant portrayals in previous biblical projects, Jenkins acknowledges that many people might assume that the show is made specifically for religious audiences, but he estimates that 30 to 40% of viewers aren't traditionally faithful. Instead, Jenkins wants The Chosen to appeal to a wider audience thanks to its distinctive approach to telling biblical stories. Are you dissatisfied with Jenkins' decision to avoid utilizing the faith-based branding? Or do you believe that this is a prudent business move? Thank you very much for that, and I really hope that you will be returning for 2 more seasons, although the conclusion of the 5th season was just a month ago. Jenkins rebranded his company from The Chosen Inc. to 5 & 2 Studios and revealed ambitious plans to expand the universe. Fans can anticipate several new spin-offs, such as the animated series The Chosen Adventures, and The Chosen in the Wild with Bear Grylls. The latter will pair The Chosen stars with the well-known survivalist as they embark on wild adventures from the beginning of the series. Additionally, Jenkins is working on new projects that are based on well-known biblical personalities such as Moses and Joseph. Additionally, he is working on a series called Acts of the Apostles, which will follow the apostles of Jesus after the resurrection on earth. It has been made very apparent by Jenkins that each and every one of these projects will continue to sustain a feeling of authenticity and human passion. There are 2 components that have contributed to The Chosen's immense popularity. Additionally, it must have a genuine and human quality. Jenkins underlined that this approach is in contrast to typical Bible productions, which, in his opinion, frequently give the impression that the characters are more like statues than actual people, while The Selected, although it will keep the Christ in Christmas. Jenkins has promised that it will not feel like a Sunday school assignment, but rather that it will be a fun and engaging story for audiences of all backgrounds. Although the Bible will continue to be the foundation of Jenkins's work, not all of his future projects will be based on the Bible. His upcoming film, The Best Christmas Pageant Ever, is scheduled to be released on November 8th. The change in tone is a part of a larger movement that is occurring in the realm of faith-based entertainment. Jenkins made the observation that the quality of religion-based storytelling has significantly increased over the years, noting successful films produced by the Irwin brothers and other content creators who are driven by their faith. The rise in quality has brought to light the fact that average people enjoy good storytelling, and they are willing to watch content from a variety of cultures and faiths if it is of sufficient quality. Jenkins asked whether you believe that avoiding the label of faith-based would prevent Jenkins from producing more projects that are religious in nature. I would appreciate it if you could share your thoughts with me in the comments section below. It is common knowledge that Jenkins has been subjected to much criticism, particularly from individuals who are inclined to disregard projects that are based on faith. However, actor Paul Walter Hauer, who recently joined the Jenkins Adventures series, defended the quality of the work when he was accused of becoming a strange Christian actor. On social media, Hauer provided a response. "I'm not going to make meaningless religious nonsense like Left Behind 5 did. This is going to be a positive thing." Jenkins was appreciative of how the defense pointed out that elevating the debate around faith-based entertainment is essential to combating prejudices. At the end of the day, Jenkins is not concerned with satisfying everyone. Rather, his primary focus is on producing work that resonates with audiences who are religious as well as audiences that are not religious. Major streaming services such as Amazon and Netflix have shown interest in programming that is themed around faith. Jenkins believes there's no denying the numbers, so there are only on November 2nd, which is a Saturday. If you see it early and you are not alone, I'm dying to watch this entire scene, as I believe Jenkins did an amazing job in adapting it to the screen. That being said, I know a lot of you guys are concerned whether the scene will be biblically accurate or not. Actually, this is a common concern within the Chosen fandom, as many tend to take everything in the show as biblical facts, which might not be true at all times. Jesse Stone just wrote an article on the show's biblical accuracy and how we should approach to it, which might be helpful to a lot of us, according to Stone. When it comes to balancing theological accuracy in The Chosen, the show follows two categories of content. First, there's what's directly drawn from the biblical texts. This includes characters, dialogues, and events from the four Gospels. Here, the review process is more straightforward because the stories can be directly compared to the Bible. Minor changes or expanded dialogues sometimes occur, but they stay true to the original message. For example, when Jesus speaks, the show often uses his exact words from the Bible, only translating them into English. The second category involves creative additions to enhance the story. This includes new characters like Ramashula and Quintus, or giving names and backstories to unnamed or briefly mentioned biblical figures, such as Simon's wife Eden or Gwas the centurion. These fictional elements help flesh out the world and personalities of the characters, but they have also drawn criticism for not being strictly biblical. He then refers to expert consultant Douglas Huffman, who reminds us that The Chosen aims to balance three things. This balance allows the show to resonate with a large audience while remaining true to its spiritual foundation. So how can we ensure that any scene in the show is theologically accurate? First, we consider the question of biblical fidelity. Second, we consider historical plausibility. Third, we consider character relatability. This balance allows the show to resonate with a wide audience, all while remaining true to its spiritual foundation. I'll leave the article linked below if you are interested in reading the full thing, but let me know how accurate you think The Chosen is. Do you question the show's accuracy frequently, or do you believe in Jenkins's loyalty to the Bible? Stone believes that if a scene passes all three of these tests, there is a high chance that it is biblically accurate. Historical accuracy and character relatability are not ends in themselves, but rather a means for helping the creative team behind The Chosen to create a show that will have a positive and long-lasting impact on the lives of millions of people. He said that if a scene passes all three of these tests, there is a high chance that it is biblically accurate. Jenkins is of the opinion that the data speaks for itself. demonstrating that the chosen universe has a bright future ahead of their shoulders. When we reach the 5th season, we find that a teaser for the show has just been published on the Instagram page for the show. Despite the fact that difficulties are unavoidable in this story, there is a message of hope that may be found in it. Take heart. I have triumphed over the world. Would you want to receive additional information? There is a broader scene from Season 5 that depicts the Last Supper, and the portion that was posted is a part of that sequence. That scene is one that I would want to show you, and the following is the most effective manner to observe it. During the early access screenings that will take place on Saturday, November 2nd, my newest film, Pageant Ever, will be made available to the public. There is a possibility that you will be entitled for a twofold award if you detect it in advance, 1 week prior to its publication on a national scale. Only the full sequence from The Last Supper, which will be featured in Season 5, will be made available to viewers. There will be no other opportunity to watch it before the 5th season is released the following year. In addition, you will get the opportunity to watch the best Christmas pageant ever, a movie that I am actually looking forward to seeing. So make sure that you make the effort to watch it when you get the chance. Now is the time to get your early access tickets for the best Christmas pageant ever, which will be held on November 2nd. Seeing you at the movies is something I am looking forward to. You might have noted that we were given a sneak peek of the famous moment from The Last Supper, which a lot of you are looking forward to seeing with great excitement. I am just as excited as you are, and I am eager to witness the entire scene because I believe that Jenkins has done an outstanding. There are questions with the depiction of this scenario in the Bible. When it comes to the chosen fandom, this is a topic that is frequently brought up for discussion. This is due to the fact that many fans frequently perceive the content of the show as being absolutely biblical reality, which may not always be the case. In his article, Jesse Stone analyzes the show's methodology as well as the scriptural authenticity of the episodes. Stone believes that the program follows 2 categories of content stuff that is directly pulled from biblical texts, such as characters, dialogues, and events from the 4 Gospels, and content that is creatively added to enhance the tale. Due to the fact that the stories may be compared to the Bible, the process of reviewing them is easily understood. There is a possibility that there will be some minor adjustments or enlarged discussions, but the message will remain unchanged. In addition, the show has new characters such as Ramashula and Quintus, as well as names and backstories for historical people such as Edin, Simon's wife, and Guas, the centurion. Critics, on the other hand, contend that these fictitious elements might not be technically of biblical origin. Professor Douglas Huffman, an expert consultant, underlines that the show strives to strike a balance between these 3 features. Because of this harmony, the program is able to connect with a large audience while still being true to its spiritual foundations. In order to ensure that each and every scenario in the performance corresponds to theological truth, what kinds of safeguards shall we put into place? Initially, we will investigate the problem of adhering to the principles found in the Bible. Second, we examine the historical plausibility of the hypothesis. Third, we investigate the degree to which characters are relatable. This equilibrium makes it possible for the program to connect with a wide range of audiences while still being true to its most fundamental spiritual principles. In order to accommodate individuals who are interested in reading, could you please offer your thoughts on the correctness of the content that was selected? Do you frequently question the show's adherence to the Bible, or do you have faith in Jenkins's dedication to the Word of God? It is Stone's contention that a scene is likely to be biblically true if it satisfies all 3 of these criteria. While the creative team is working to build a show that intends to favorably and enduringly touch the lives of millions of people, they are using historical truth and character relatability as instruments to do this. According to what he said, there is a high probability that while the family of Zebedee is busy celebrating, Simon Peter is busy destroying wine vessels on the roof of his house. He is continuing to deal with his fury brought on by the knowledge that Eden had a miscarriage. In the midst of his drunken rage, Simon manages to stumble his way into the Roman quarter without being spotted by the Roman guards. This is an Easter egg that is a reference to the fact that Simon walks out of Roman prison without being detected in Acts 12. Gaius locates him and brings him back to his home in order to protect him from being harmed by other Roman troops. Simon is introduced to his wife, Lydia, his legitimate son Marius, and his servant boy Ebo, all of whom are present in Gaius's residence. Lydia is curious as to whether or not Simon is the Jewish physician that Gaius has been referring to, more specifically Jesus. After snatching Simon out of the side entrance, Gaius brings him back to his house. Gaius shares with Simon the news that the servant boy is ill, but the Roman doctors refuse to cure him because he is black. This information is shared as they make their way back home. Furthermore, Gaius discloses that he is the father of the servant boy and that he is experiencing feelings of remorse regarding this matter nonetheless. He and his wife choose not to discuss this matter. At the same time as he wishes him complete and utter tranquility, Simon cautions him that silence between a husband and wife is inherently lethal. Simon failed to attend a crucial gathering between Jesus and the apostles, during which they discussed their intention to travel to the Decapolis. In light of the fact that Simon Peter's presence is essential to the accomplishment of the mission, Jesus requests that John remain behind in order to bring Simon Peter. John is irritated and believes that they ought to either abandon Simon or have someone else wait for him, but Jesus maintains that it must be John. John is the one who must abide by this requirement. When Simon wakes up the following morning, he is attempting to determine where everyone went. As he does so, he comes across Zebedee, who is irritated by the fact that Simon has been acting so distant as of late. When John arrives, he takes Simon aside and tells where the apostles left. He then recounts how he reluctantly pushes Simon to come along with him so that he might accompany him. During their journey, Simon complains about having to travel to the Decapolis and brings up the fact that they have witnessed Jesus do miracles outside of the city. When John realizes that Simon is having difficulty, he almost instantly apologizes for his behavior, despite the fact that he has expressed his displeasure with the fact that Simon is treated as if he is exceptional and that he has a lovely wife and nothing to complain about. In the end, Simon opens up to John about Eden and reveals that it is possible that she will not be able to have children as a result of the childbirth that occurred. He is unable to comprehend the reason that Jesus goes to great lengths to heal individuals who are far away while permitting them to endure suffering. John reminds him that Jesus never promised that they would be spared from hardship, and that Eden might have miscarried just as easily if he wasn't following, but Simon is still angry when they arrive and find Jesus in the multitudes after John's reminder. In the 8th episode, Simon is present when the crowds gather around Jesus at the Decapolis, and he plays a role in the unfolding events which will be told in greater detail below, as they are not truly Simon's story. He is obviously still irritated and agitated during the entire period, as we can see, for instance, when Andrew tells him that the masses are hungry, and he reacts by saying that there is nothing that is forcing them to stay. It is necessary to encourage Andrew to be gracious due to the fact that he is frustrated with him. Simon is adamant that Jesus is able to accomplish anything he desires, and so it is of little consequence with regard to what they do. Even after the miracle feeding of the 5,000, when all of the other disciples are in awe of what has just happened, Simon is not impressed and he walks away to find them a boat to take them back home. Although he is encouraged to have faith, he maintains that faith is not where he is having issues. After some time has passed, and the apostles are making their way back to Capernaum by rowing the boat, they were engulfed in a tremendous storm and are unable to make any headway. Despite this, Simon encourages them to continue on their journey, rather than turning back. Psalm 77, which Eden is reading with Yusuf, is echoed by John's sudden observation of a figure walking on the waves. John then points this out to Simon, who then instructs everyone to stop the pattern of John perceiving and understanding things before Simon appears a few times in the Bible. For example, John 23:9. Simon indicates that if Jesus is who he claims to be, then he ought to extend an invitation to Simon to walk out to him on the sea. Jesus asserts that he is able to do so, provided that Simon has trust in him. Although the other apostles aren't entirely certain, Simon decides to speak up. During the time that he is walking on the water regarding the troubles that they are individually facing, Jesus gives a response by reiterating his invitation to. Jesus explains that trials confirm the authenticity of our faith, an allusion to 1 Peter 1:6-7, and encourages Simon to keep his eyes on him. Simon's argument indicates that he has given everything to follow. Of course, Simon immediately gets distracted and begins to sink. But with the helps of Eden's prayers, more on that below, he is pulled out of the waters by Jesus while use. Simon grabs a hold of Jesus and begs Jesus to never let him go. Jesus explains to Simon that he has a lot of hard things planned for him and that he needs to keep his eyes on him. He tells Simon that he's always here, and though he may let him go hungry for a time, he will always feed him. Jesus then calms the storm. Later, in a final montage, we see Simon return home and joyfully reunite with Eden. In spite of the fact that Eden's and Simon's narratives are obviously interwoven, the three of them really spend a relatively small amount of time on screen together, which is why it is beneficial to examine them independently. In the opening teaser of episode 8, David and one of his pregnant queens, perhaps Bathsheba, who is pregnant with Solomon, get the opportunity to listen to Asaph and his choir recite Psalm 77. This serves to establish the overall theme of Eden's story. In the midst of suffering and distress, the psalm lays the groundwork for the concept of pleading with God for help. In the beginning of the 8th episode, Eden is challenged by Zebedee, his wife, and Mary Magdalene, all of whom are interested in finding out what the issue is with Simon. Despite the fact that Zebedee is irritated by Simon's impoliteness, he recognizes that Simon is making an effort to become a better man and is currently in a far better position than his father Jonah ever was. Eden reveals to Simon that the problem is not just with him, rather, it is associated with both of them. Zebedee puts his foot in his mouth and asks Eden whether she is pregnant. However, his wife and Mary quickly realize what is actually going on and urge Zebedee to let them have a private conversation with Eden. Zebedee agrees to have the conversation. Eden openly discusses the miscarriage and how she has not yet recovered from the experience. They are curious as to whether or not it is connected to the fact that she has not completely completed the rite of cleansing, and they also wonder if she simply requires room to grieve. Veronica is cured, purified, and given joy by Jesus, but Eden is frustrated that Jesus has not done the same for her. Eden voices her dissatisfaction. The ladies come to the conclusion that Eden ought to go to the synagogue in order to hear the word of God. The story that Eden has to tell Yusuf is told to him when she gets at his workplace. He expresses his condolences to her and acknowledges that Torah has very little. It is obvious that Eden is impacted. After some time has passed, when Simon is having his encounter with Jesus on the Sea of Galilee, which takes place after Simon returns. Following their return to the Decapolis, Andrew and Philip are seen making their way back to their home toward the opening of episode 7. While Philip is preoccupied with his thoughts and concerned that they have just made the situation worse, Andrew, who is fuming with frustration, continues to urge him to speed up. It was a fitting conclusion to their bloody journey that Philip ended up having a severe injury to his toe. Given the amount of time Philip has spent with John the Baptist, Andrew is taken aback by the fact that Philip is not managing things better. Philip emphasizes that they have failed by pointing out that they have generated a problem that involves multiple ethnic groups and has the potential to result in bloodshed. When they return to Capernaum, they explain to Judas that by telling the parable of the banquet, they have only made the situation in Decapolis even more dire than it already was. Instantaneously, he comprehends that they have enraged the Jews, since it means that the Gentiles are welcomed, and humiliated the Gentiles, because it implies that they are of a lower social status. It is Judas who advises that they seek the assistance of Jesus. During the following scene, a few of the other disciples engage in a brief conversation about the subject of the Gentiles. It is brought to Simon Z's attention that the authorities of the Gentile side believe that they are gathering ash for some kind of murderous plot. Big James is opposed to intervening when they learn about what has place with Andrew and Philip, but the other individuals point out that Isaiah makes a prophecy that the servant will deliver justice to the nations, for example, Isaiah 42:1. In addition, Matthew mentions that throughout the course of his research into the genealogy of Jesus, he has discovered that there are a number of Gentiles who play a significant role in it. This is an allusion to Matthew 1:17. Subsequently, Jesus inquires of Philip and Andrew as to what went wrong and validates their choice to use a parable. He does not employ the parable of the wheat and the tares weeds, which has the potential to be misconstrued, which is a reference to the fact that it has been used to legitimize acts of violence and inquisitions throughout the history of the church. As a result of their preaching, pagan priests and augurs have been converted, which has had a ripple effect on the economics of the region, which has led to ethnic warfare. Philip and Andrew provide additional information regarding the situation in the Decapolis. In spite of the fact that Big James is not certain that it is a good idea to put Jesus in such a precarious circumstance, Jesus is adamant on going. When Andrew and Philip are feeling down, he offers them some solace by pointing out that it is unavoidable to drop big things from time to time when you are carrying them. Moving in the direction of the Decapolis are the apostles. They are met outside of the city by Leander, the messenger from episode 6, who is also accompanied by a young boy named Telemachus and his father, who is deaf and mute. This is done in order to protect them from the disturbance. Telemachus makes a request to Jesus to heal his father, despite the fact that the disciples argue that there are other things that are more important. Jesus responds to Telemachus's faith by healing his father, but he requests the disciples to keep their request private so that they do not attract unwanted attention. Mark 7:31-37. It is unfortunate that a Jewish healer from the area named Nahshon enters and takes offense at the fact that Jesus is conferring with Greeks who are similar to them, as well as the fact that he has healed a man whom he believes to be a victim of God's punishment. Gatherings of people start to take place at this point. To begin, a group of Syrophoenicians makes their way in. It is very important to them that they see the miraculous signs that they have heard about, especially considering that the commotion that was generated by followers of Jesus has forced them to lose their houses. They are then followed by a group of Nabateans who ridicule the concept of the Messiah, as well as some local Jews who object to the fact that Jesus came into contact with people of the opposite gender. The apostles examine whether or not it is necessary for them to ascend to a higher ground. This is where the storyline resumes up in episode 8, with the Nabateans expressing their dissatisfaction with the apostles' inability to communicate and demonstrate the teachings of Jesus. While Jesus is speaking to his apostles, he extends an invitation to the multitude to listen. When Jesus inquires about the circumstances that led to Veronica's recovery, the apostles initially assert that it was the power that emanated from his cloak. Jesus corrects them by pointing out that faith, and not the cloak, was what healed her, and he emphasizes to the diverse throng that confidence in him is what must be prioritized above all else. The disciples are aware that they do not have enough faith, and Judas approaches Jesus with a request to strengthen their faith. Jesus continues by pointing out that people only need faith as small as a mustard seed in order to uproot a mulberry tree, Luke 17:5-6, or even to toss a mountain into the sea, Matthew 17:20. The issue is not the magnitude of their faith, but rather the object, which is Jesus, God, and his promises. According to Jesus, other people will only pay attention to the apostles if they observe them demonstrating a strong trust in what they are saying. Consider the following scenario as an illustration of firm faith. A man who has an infected leg comes to Jesus, asks him to heal it, and then runs away in joy. Instantaneously, all of the opposing factions who have been observing are overwhelmed with astonishment and make the decision to take a seat and pay closer attention to what Jesus has to say. The preaching of Jesus' disciples caused a disruption in the social order of the city, and Jesus now began to engage with representatives of each party in order to gain further insight into the manner in which this occurred. The conversation is rife with sniping between the Jews and the Gentiles over their separate religious customs and differences, and even Big James and John feel agitated by it. However, Jesus is able to keep the peace throughout the conversation. When the prophets ordered the local Jews to seek the ancient paths, Jeremiah 6:16, the local Jews are dissatisfied because Jesus is proposing a new way that entails incorporating Gentiles. However, it is pointed out to them that the prophets also foretold how God would accomplish a new thing by way of example, Isaiah 43:18-19. Despite this, they have little interest in participating in a feast that includes unbelievers. The Gentile factions, on the other hand, are intrigued, but they want to know why Jesus generates such polarized views, and so, after organizing the apostles as a kind of living telephone speaker system, he tells the parable of the sower, Matthew 13:1-9. As more and more people arrive from the cities that are nearby, the crowds continue to spread out and expand. Jesus continues his sermons well into the night, emphasizing that he encounters opposition from Jews in the same way that he encounters hostility from Gentiles in the places where he spreads his message and performs miracles. He makes the point that those who are eagerly listening to him ultimately have more wisdom than the high and learned religious leaders. He then expresses gratitude to God for exposing himself to them and invites them to come to him for rest, Matthew 11:25-30. Both Judas and Matthew are aware that most likely there are thousands of people present. A few of the individuals had not consumed any food in several days, which is a source of concern for Andrew. He starts seeking for something to eat. The following day, Jesus is telling the parable of two sons working in the vineyard to discuss how faithless Jews can be rejected and repentant Gentiles can be welcomed, Matthew 21:28-32. Additionally, Jesus is telling the parables of the treasure, Matthew 13:44, and the pearl, Matthew 13:45-46, to discuss the significance of the kingdom. Andrew, in the meantime, continues his search for sustenance, and Telemachus provides him with fish and bread, and not just bread, barley bread, as a joke on the distinction between the various stories of the feeding of the 5,000. During the time that Jesus is teaching, the disciples are discussing the food problem, and little James makes the decision to eventually interrupt him in order to seek for assistance. Jesus is adamant that they provide the people with adequate nourishment. In response to Andrew and Telemachus's apologies for bringing the 5 loaves and fish, Jesus asserts that he can accomplish a lot with it. Thomas is able to see this as an indication of a miracle because he brings to mind the transformation of water into wine. After Jesus has blessed the bread, he proceeds to deliver parables, such as the mustard seed, Matthew 13:31-32, while the apostles divide the 5 loaves of bread and the fish into 12 baskets. After closing their baskets for a little period of time, the disciples are taken aback when they open them up to find that they are stuffed to the full with fish and bread. As the disciples distribute the bread and fish, Jesus expresses gratitude to the audience for remaining for such a long time in order to get spiritual nourishment, and extends an invitation to them to also have pleasure in the physical nourishment. After some time has passed, and the audience has eaten its fill, the apostles bring back their baskets, which are still filled with bread and fish, and express their gratitude to Jesus for providing them with more than they required. Matthew makes the observation that he is no longer even astonished, and John makes the observation that, just as Simon stated, Jesus always accomplishes what he intends to succeed in. The people disperse and head back to their homes. Mary takes Matthew aside at the beginning of episode 7 and inquires about the tassels that she discovered in episode 6 while she was searching for money. After being irritated by the fact that she has been searching through his personal belongings, Matthew rushes out of the room. On the other hand, he returns at a later time and expresses his regret to Mary, who also expresses her regret for violating his privacy. Matthew adds that he, like Jesus, has been away in the desert, but when he walked through a lot of mud, he sensed that it was a sign that he should turn around and apologize to Mary and explain himself to her. We are taken back in time to the time when Matthew and Gaius were working at the tax booth. After arriving, an elderly gentleman starts a conversation with him. Matthew is taken aback by the amount of debt that the man has accumulated, particularly considering the fact that he has a meager income. The father says that he has purchased the debt of all of his children and placed it under his own name, which is a remarkable accomplishment that Matthew finds to be quite impressive. The man is aware that he is about to meet his Creator, and he is content to go to a Roman labor camp, regardless of the fact that he will not survive for very long. This is an act of symbolic self-sacrifice on his part. He offers Matthew his final valuable possession, which is a collection of prayer tassels that date back to the time of the exile. Despite the fact that Matthew claims he is currently unable to make use of these items and that he intends to sell them in order to satisfy the man's financial obligations, the man is convinced that Matthew will eventually realize the significance of the gift and urges that he keep them. Coming back to the present, Matthew explains to Mary that he preserved the tassels as a symbol of his contrition for the guy and as a reminder of the offenses he committed against his people. Mary comforts him when he confides in her how guilty he feels, stating that what the guy truly wanted was for Matthew to share his religion and that he would be very delighted to learn that Matthew has indeed come to believe. Mary shares this information with him when he confides in her this information. In the first episode of the first season, she confides in Matthew about her near-death experience and how God intervened by sending a dove to save her life. She also hints that the dove in question was Matthew's own. Mary makes the observation that the suffering that individuals experience in life can cause them to believe that the world is full of scarcity rather than abundance. However, she also explains that there are times when the world expresses its desire to be complete, and God intervenes to fulfill that desire. In order to inspire Matthew to overcome his feelings of shame and embrace a life of faith, she encourages him to take proud ownership of the tassels. At a later time, Matthew approaches Thad and asks for his assistance in tasseling his clothing. They talk about how the 600 threads and 13 knots reflect the 613 precepts of the Torah and how they should be surrounded by God's message throughout the day. This is a comical and awkward time because Matthew does not want to undress in front of other people. At the time that the apostles finally left out for the Decapolis, Matthew is wearing his tassels with great pride. At the beginning of the 7th episode, Shmuel is eagerly conducting an interview with a witness who is speaking about a man named Jesus who deceived him by claiming to be the Messiah and then stealing money from him. Eventually, however, Shmuel comes to the realization that the witness had been merely taken advantage of by a scam artist, and he decides to send him away out of frustration. Atticus speaks with a Jewish official outside of the temple to inquire about the identity of the person who is the authority on rogue preachers. It is revealed to him that it is Rabbi Yanni, who is Shmuel's buddy and companion. It has been brought to my attention that during episode 8, when Jesus cures a deaf and mute Gentile, it causes a local Jewish healer named Nahshon to feel offended. The ban against wearing a garment that is constructed out of 2 different types of cloth is violated by Nahshon when he travels to Jerusalem. He is a fish out of water, since he does not have the appropriate prayer tassels, and he violates the prohibition Deuteronomy 22:11. In spite of the fact that Shmuel displays nothing but scorn for Nahshon, he has a great deal of interest in hearing Nahshon's account of how Jesus of Nazareth is mingling with people of other races. At the moment that Nahshon is leaving Shmuel's lodgings, he comes face to face with Atticus, who has found his wandering mule. Nahshon is asked by Atticus, who is pretending to be a regular guy, to provide him with additional information regarding the significant news that came him from such a great distance. After some time has passed, Shmuel, Yanni, and an older Pharisee are taken in a carriage and transported to Decapolis. Shmuel's decision to call him in the middle of the night to travel to the Decapolis is something that the senior Pharisee finds extremely annoying. Shmuel makes the observation that Shammai is adamant about adhering to the rule of God to the letter, and that serving God ought to be their primary concern before everything else. Despite the fact that the elder Pharisee considers Shmuel to be haughty, Shmuel says that he is simply carrying out what Shammai instructed him to do, which is to identify numerous pieces of evidence that indict Jesus. On the other hand, the senior Pharisee raises doubts about the usefulness of locating a single-robed preacher in the Decapolis, which is characterized by a wide variety of theological syncretism. When Shmuel asserts that Jesus is a sorcerer, the elder calls attention to the fact that situations involving magic are difficult to manage. As all is going on, Atticus is following behind their carriage.